The Galactic Combat Academy was one of the most prestigious institutions in the known universe, a place where warriors from all over the galaxy came to prove their strength, skill, and reflexes. It was here that the greatest fighters were trained, tested, and ranked according to their combat abilities. But today was different. Today, a human was among them, and most of the alien spectators had already dismissed the species as nothing special. After all, compared to the massive, armored Ralkesh, the four-armed Velcran duelists, or the lightning-fast Tarthok hunters, what could a mere human possibly offer? Captain Ryan Carter stood in the middle of the arena, calm and composed, his eyes scanning the alien crowd. He had been selected to represent humanity in the Reflex Trials, a tournament designed to test the reaction speed and combat instincts of different species. But the problem was simple. No one expected him to last long. The announcer, a tall insectoid being with multiple eyes, clicked its mandibles before speaking. First match: Velcran duelist versus human combatant. The crowd roared in excitement as the massive four-armed Velcran stepped forward. Its thick exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lights, and its lower arms held twin energy blades, each humming with deadly power. It towered over Ryan, flexing its muscles as it grinned. "I will make this quick, human," it growled in a deep, guttural voice. Ryan didn't respond. He simply loosened his shoulders, adjusting his stance slightly. The referee, a neutral AI drone, floated above the arena and signaled the start of the match with a loud beep. The moment the sound echoed through the air, the Velcran lunged forward, moving at incredible speed, its four arms striking in perfect coordination. To the untrained eye, it was impossible to counter such an attack. But then, something happened that no one expected. Ryan moved. Not just moved. He reacted faster than anything the spectators had ever seen. His body twisted slightly to the left, avoiding the first two strikes by millimeters. Before the Velcran could adjust, Ryan's left arm shot up, slamming into one of its lower arms, redirecting the energy blade away from his body. Then, in one fluid motion, he stepped forward, ducked under the next attack, and struck. His open palm hit the Velcran square in the chest. The impact was so fast, so precise, that it bypassed the creature's natural defenses. The air seemed to explode as the Velcran was launched backward, crashing onto the ground with a heavy thud. Silence. The entire arena went completely still. No one spoke. No one cheered. The alien spectators simply stared, their expressions a mixture of confusion and disbelief. The Velcran warrior groaned, struggling to rise, but its limbs trembled uncontrollably. It tried to speak, but only a weak gasp escaped its lips. The match was over in less than a second. The announcer hesitated before finally declaring victory to the human. A ripple of stunned murmurs spread through the crowd. This wasn't normal. No one had ever defeated a Velcran in a reflex match this quickly. Whispers spread like wildfire. How did the human react so fast? Did he predict the attack? Was it luck? No, this was something else. Ryan remained calm, stepping back to his starting position, as if nothing had happened. His heartbeat was steady, his breathing normal. To him, this was just another fight. In the control room above the arena, a group of alien scientists and war strategists watched the footage in slow motion, trying to analyze what had happened. Dr. Xerlock, a reptilian researcher with decades of experience in combat physiology, played the scene over and over, pausing at the exact moment Ryan moved. He turned to his assistants, his scaled face filled with shock. This is not possible," he muttered. "Humans should not be this fast. They are not an advanced species. Their bodies are weaker than most." How did he react before the attack even landed? Another scientist, a short amphibian creature, adjusted its datapad. "Sir, I analyzed his muscle response. His reaction time is beyond our expected limits. It's like his body knew the attack was coming before it happened." Dr. Xurlock narrowed his eyes. If this was true, then humanity possessed a biological advantage no one had considered before. Most species relied on technology, armor, or brute force in combat. But humans? They had pure instinct, honed reflexes, and an ability to react at speeds that should have been impossible. Back in the arena, Ryan looked up at the viewing deck where high-ranking warlords and generals observed the trials. He could already see the worry in their expressions. These were the leaders of empires who had dismissed humanity as insignificant. But now, they were rethinking everything. The next opponent was already stepping forward. A Xarthok warrior, one of the fastest species in the galaxy. It hissed in frustration, its claws twitching in agitation. It had seen what Ryan did, and now it was afraid. Ryan simply smirked, cracking his knuckles. Next. The arena remained silent for several moments after Ryan's shocking victory over the Velkran duelist. No one had expected the fight to end in less than a second. The spectators, the warlords, the strategists, even the announcer, all of them were struggling to process what they had just witnessed. A human, one of the so-called weaker species, had reacted so fast that a four-armed warrior, known for its unmatched speed, had no chance to even adjust mid-attack. But now, the next challenger stepped forward. The Xarthok warrior slithered onto the battlefield, its sleek, reptilian body coiling as it studied Ryan with narrow, glowing eyes. The Xarthok were one of the fastest species in the known galaxy. Their bodies were lightweight, built for extreme agility, with limbs designed to strike at speeds that most creatures couldn't even perceive. In combat, they were known to overwhelm opponents with a flurry of rapid attacks that came from impossible angles. This warrior, called Skren, was no ordinary Xarthok. It was a master of its kind. Undefeated in the reflex trials, its species prided itself on speed, believing themselves untouchable. But now, there was something unsettling in Skren's posture. It was hesitating. For the first time in its life, it wasn't sure if it was fast enough. The announcer finally spoke, his voice buzzing through the speakers. Next match. Xarthok combatant versus the human. The crowd, still stunned, remained quiet. But this time, there was a different kind of energy in the air. Fear. No one knew what was about to happen. Skren hissed lowly, its long claws twitching in anticipation. Its kind had never lost in a test of speed. It refused to be the first. The referee drone gave the signal. Beep. Skren vanished. Or at least, that's what it looked like. In the blink of an eye, the Xarthok launched forward at inhuman speed, its claws slashing through the air in a blur of movement. Most fighters would not even see the attack coming. The Xarthok could move so fast that their strikes seemed to appear out of thin air. It had won countless battles this way, speed so overwhelming that no opponent could react in time. But Ryan was already gone. The Xarthok's claws slashed at empty space. It blinked, confused. Where did? Crack! A shockwave erupted through the arena. Before the Xarthok could even register what had happened, its body was already flying backward, spinning through the air. It crashed against the metal floor with a loud thud, sliding several meters before coming to a stop. The impact sent a ripple of dust and debris into the air. The crowd gasped. Ryan was standing exactly where he had been before, completely calm. His right hand was still raised slightly, fingers relaxed from the palm strike he had just delivered. It was almost casual, effortless. The Xarthok warrior twitched, trying to rise, but its limbs refused to move. Its body had already gone into shock. The strike had been too fast, too precise, too devastating. It had lost in an instant. The silence that followed was almost suffocating. Ryan exhaled, shaking his head slightly. He hadn't even needed to use his full strength. Against an opponent that relied purely on speed, it was just another simple fight. Speed alone wasn't enough to win, not against a human. The announcer's voice trembled as he declared, "V victory to the human." This time, the fear in the crowd was visible. The alien warlords in the viewing deck were whispering amongst themselves, their faces pale with worry. This was no longer just an impressive display. This was a threat. Humans weren't supposed to be capable of this. Their biology was considered primitive, their strength and endurance below galactic standards. Yet, somehow, they were faster than the fastest species in the galaxy. One of the generals, a towering armored figure with glowing red eyes, turned to a group of advisors. "Did you see that?" he growled. That human didn't just react. He anticipated the attack. He moved before the Xarthok even finished its strike. Dr. Xurlock, the reptilian scientist observing from the control room, tapped his data pad furiously. It doesn't make sense. Humans should not be able to process movement at that speed. The Xarthok moved faster than the brain can send signals to the body. And yet, he dodged. He countered. It was as if he paused, his claws tightening around the screen. As if he already knew what was going to happen. The implications were terrifying. Reflexes were one thing, but predicting an attack before it even happened, that was something beyond simple biological advantage. That was something else entirely. Back in the arena, Ryan stretched his arms, loosening his shoulders. His expression never changed, calm, unreadable. He looked up at the warlords in the observation deck, meeting their eyes directly. He could see their unease. Good. They should be afraid. A new challenger stepped forward. This time, a war machine. A Sarkhan combat drone, designed for instant reaction and precision strikes. A machine with no hesitation, no fear, no weakness. The audience murmured nervously. If the human was somehow outreacting organic species, then a machine would be the real test. Ryan simply smirked, rolling his shoulders. "All right," he muttered to himself. "Let's see what a machine can do." The arena's lights dimmed for a brief moment as the Sarkhan combat drone activated, its metallic frame humming with raw energy. Unlike the previous challengers, this opponent felt different. It had no pulse, no emotions, no hesitation. It was a machine designed for war, built by one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The Sarkhan Empire prided itself on efficiency, precision, and flawless reaction speed. Ryan studied the machine carefully. It was humanoid in design but unnervingly smooth, with no wasted movement. The drone's sleek frame was covered in a dark, flexible alloy, its limbs moving with unnatural fluidity. It had no face, only a glowing red visor that tracked Ryan's every movement with terrifying accuracy. From the viewing deck, the warlords leaned forward in their seats. This was it. The previous fights had been shocking, but many still believed there had to be some logical explanation. Maybe the Velkran warrior had been overconfident. Maybe the Xarthok had underestimated human reflexes. But a machine was different. There would be no errors, no miscalculations. It had no fear, no arrogance, only pure, calculated destruction. The announcer hesitated before activating the match. The arena had been silent for too long. Beep. The moment the signal sounded, the machine moved. It didn't just move fast, it moved instantly. A normal warrior would have taken a fraction of a second to launch an attack. The combat drone had no delay. The very instant the fight started, its metallic arms blurred forward, striking directly at Ryan's head with perfect accuracy. The crowd barely saw it. To the spectators, the attack was impossible to react to. It was designed to strike before the brain could even register danger. There were no telegraph movements, no build-up, just a perfectly calculated death strike. But Ryan wasn't there. The drone's metal fist slammed into nothing. A fraction of a second later, a loud bang echoed through the arena. The audience gasped. Ryan was behind the machine, standing completely relaxed. His hands were still at his sides, his stance barely shifting. The combat drone remained frozen in place, its sensors flickering as if trying to understand what had just happened. The warlords on the viewing deck stiffened. One of them growled, "Replay that." The screen above the arena lit up, showing the moment frame by frame. The audience watched in horrified disbelief as Ryan vanished just before impact. No, not vanished. He moved. But he moved so fast, so smoothly, that it seemed as if time had frozen for him. Then, the replay showed something even worse. Ryan didn't just dodge. He dodged before the drone even launched its attack. Dr. Xurlock, the reptilian scientist, was sweating. His claws gripped his data pad so tightly it nearly cracked. That's not possible. One of the warlords turned sharply. Explain. Xurlock's eyes darted between the monitor and Ryan's unmoving form. The combat drone doesn't have reaction time. It attacks the instant the match begins, before the opponent can even move. That's why it's so dangerous. It should be impossible to counter. Then how did he do it? Another warlord hissed. Xurlock swallowed. He predicted it. The room fell silent. The implications were horrifying. Humans weren't just fast. They weren't just reacting faster than their enemies. They were seeing the attacks before they even happened. Back in the arena, Ryan exhaled, cracking his neck slightly. "Huh," he muttered. "Not bad." The combat drone adjusted instantly. It was an adaptive AI. It wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Its red visor glowed brighter, processing new strategies in milliseconds. If one direct strike wouldn't work then, it needed to unleash everything. The machine's body shifted, its arms separating into multiple articulated segments. From within its wrists, hidden energy blades ignited, humming with lethal energy. The crowd tensed. This was the drone's real combat mode. It didn't attack with one strike this time. It attacked with 50. A storm of razor-sharp blades slashed toward Ryan at blinding speed, moving so fast that the air itself crackled with heat. The entire arena seemed to explode as the machine unleashed an unstoppable flurry of death. Ryan moved. To the audience, it was a blur. A ghostly shadow weaving through the hurricane of blades with impossible precision. Every attack missed by mere centimeters. Not because the drone was inaccurate, but because Ryan was dodging the moment before each strike landed. The machine adjusted. It calculated new attack patterns, faster, deadlier, but it didn't matter. Ryan wasn't fighting the drone in the present. He was fighting it seconds ahead. The warlords stood from their seats. This wasn't just combat reflexes. This was something else. It was precognition. For the first time, the machine hesitated. The AI processed the data and came to a chilling realization. It could not hit him. Ryan exhaled slowly. Time to end this. The moment he shifted forward, the drone tried to retreat, but it was too late. Crack! A single palm strike landed against the drone's chest. The force was immediate. The entire combat frame collapsed inward, metal crumpling like paper. The drone was launched backward with terrifying force, slamming into the arena wall so hard that the steel cracked. Silence. The crowd was frozen. Then, with a loud clatter, the drone fell to the ground, motionless. Ryan sighed, rolling his shoulders. That was a little better. He turned toward the viewing deck, where the warlords and strategists stared at him in absolute shock. He could feel it now. The fear. They had all assumed that machines would be the perfect warriors, that speed and precision were unbeatable. But now, they were terrified, because humans weren't just fast. They were unpredictable. And that made them the deadliest force in the galaxy. The silence in the arena stretched, heavy with disbelief. The Sarkin combat drone, the pinnacle of machine warfare, undefeated across hundreds of battles, lay in a crumpled heap against the far wall. Smoke hissed from its shattered core, sparks flickering like dying stars. The only sound was the faint hum of failing servos as the AI inside attempted to restart. But it wouldn't. Because Ryan had destroyed it with a single blow. He rolled his shoulders, exhaling. That was easier than expected. Up in the viewing deck, the warlords sat frozen, their expressions locked between shock and something much worse. Fear. This One of them rasped, gripping the metal railing with clawed fingers. "This is impossible." A Montauk general, his thick, plated exoskeleton barely shifting as he clenched his mandibles in disbelief, turned to Dr. Zerlock, the scientist whose knowledge of combat physics was unmatched. "Explain. Now." Zerlock's hands trembled as he stared at his datapad, trying to process the impossible. This goes beyond simple reaction speed," he muttered. His forked tongue flicked out in anxiety. "At first, I thought human reflexes were just highly efficient. But this isn't reaction. This is something else." One of the warlords, a towering reptilian from the Ralcor Dominion, growled. "You mean to tell me a mere human is faster than a machine? A machine designed for war?" Zerlock swallowed. "Not just faster," he whispered. "He moved before the machine even attacked." The warlord stiffened. The implications were horrifying. Machines were built to be flawless. They had no hesitation, no wasted movement, no uncertainty. The moment the match began, the drone had struck immediately, faster than even the most elite warriors in the galaxy could react to. And yet, Ryan had moved before the drone even launched its strike. "How?" A deep, rumbling voice asked from the shadows. The others turned. Supreme Warlord Karshik, the most feared military leader of the Zarkixan Dominion, leaned forward, his reptilian eyes glowing with dangerous curiosity. "How did he do it?" Zerlock hesitated, but there was no escaping the truth. His voice was barely above a whisper. He saw it before it happened. The warlords didn't speak. They understood immediately. This wasn't just about reflexes. Humans weren't reacting to attacks. They were predicting them. And that changed everything. Back in the arena, Ryan looked up. He could feel their eyes on him. The weight of their growing fear, their uncertainty. They had expected an animal, a primitive species relying on brute strength. Instead, they had witnessed something else entirely. Ryan let out a slow breath, stepping over the remains of the combat drone. He turned toward the viewing deck, meeting the gaze of the warlords above. His expression was unreadable. Calm. Almost. Bored. "Is that it?" he asked. The warlord stiffened. There was no arrogance in his tone, no mockery, just genuine disappointment. As if their greatest weapon, their ultimate test of reflexes and speed, had been a minor inconvenience. A murmur ran through the crowd. Warriors, tacticians, and scholars, all of them watching, realizing the same thing. The test wasn't over. It had only just begun. In the warlord's chamber, the atmosphere was suffocating. A holographic screen replayed the battle in slow motion. Every frame, every detail, analyzed over and over. But no matter how many times they watched it, the truth didn't change. Ryan moved before the attack came. The Montauk general clenched his fists. "Are we saying humans can see the future?" Zerlock shook his head. "No, it's not actual precognition. He hesitated, then continued. "It's something unique to them. Humans have an instinct. A gut feeling. Their brains process movement, intent, and micro-expressions at a subconscious level. They don't realize they're doing it, but it gives them a level of prediction that no other species has." "That's absurd," another warlord hissed. Zerlock's hands tightened. "Is it?" He motioned toward the screen. "Watch again." The footage played once more. Ryan's posture, his breathing, the subtle way his eyes tracked not the drone itself, but its center of mass. He wasn't watching the attacks. He was watching the movement before the attack even began. And then, he simply knew. A realization settled over the warlords like a dark cloud. Their entire understanding of warfare was flawed. For centuries, they had believed that combat was about power, speed, and endurance. Their greatest warriors trained for strength, agility, and discipline. Their technology focused on improving reaction time. But none of that mattered. Because humans didn't need to react. They could see the battle before it even happened, and that made them the deadliest fighters in the galaxy. Back in the arena, Ryan stretched his arms. He had been patient. He had played along with their little test. But now, it was starting to bore him. He looked up at the warlord's chamber, meeting their stunned gazes with calm, unreadable eyes. So, what's next? For the first time, the warlords hesitated, because now, they weren't sure if they wanted to find out. The silence in the warlord's chamber was deafening. No one spoke. No one moved. Ryan's question still lingered in the air. So, what's next? The warlords should have had an answer. They had spent centuries crafting the most rigorous, brutal combat tests in the galaxy. Every species had struggled. Even the most elite warriors had barely passed. And yet, a single human had crushed their ultimate test in mere minutes. The Montauk general's claws dug into the stone table, his mandibles clicking in frustration. We need another test," he muttered. "Something harder." The Ralcor warlord, still watching the replay of the fight, narrowed his reptilian eyes. "No," he growled. "We need to stop." The others turned to him, confused. "Stop," the Montauk general hissed. "Are you afraid?" The Ralcor warlord's expression darkened. "You don't understand." His voice was low, filled with tension. "This is no longer a test." He pointed to the screen, where Ryan's last movement played on loop, the moment he destroyed the combat drone with a single precise strike. "This is a warning." A shiver ran through the room. They had always assumed humans were inferior, physically weaker, slower, lacking natural weapons. Now, they understood their mistake. It wasn't just about speed, it was about perception. Humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't rely on brute strength. They didn't react with calculated precision like machines. They adapted. They learned. And worst of all, they enjoyed it. Back in the arena, Ryan sighed. The warlords were taking too long. He had expected more from them, more of a challenge. This was supposed to be a test of skill, wasn't it? So why did it feel like they were stalling? Ryan rolled his shoulders, his muscles loose and relaxed. He wasn't even tired. Maybe that's what scared them the most. He looked up again at the warlord's chamber, watching their silent argument. They didn't know what to do. They had planned for every outcome, except this one. Ryan smirked. They're afraid. He could see it in their eyes. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The warlords had to decide, fast. Because if they showed weakness now, the entire galactic order could collapse. Humans were still new to the greater galaxy. They were supposed to be just another species, one to be ranked, classified, and controlled. But what if they weren't? What if humanity was something else entirely? The Supreme Warlord, Karshik, finally spoke, his deep voice cutting through the tension. "We cannot let this go unanswered," he said. "We must test him again." The Montauk general nodded. "Agreed. We'll put him against something stronger." But Xerlock, the scientist, hesitated. "There's nothing stronger," he said quietly. The warlords turned to him. Xerlock's hands clenched. His mind raced through every combat scenario, every record of battle. No warrior, no machine, no elite squad had ever moved like that. If they sent another drone, another challenger, it wouldn't matter. Ryan would win. Because humans didn't just fight. They ended fights. The realization settled in Xerlock's gut like a stone. They should stop this now, before it was too late. But the warlords didn't see it. They only saw a challenge they refused to lose. Karshik turned, his reptilian eyes gleaming. "Summon the apex beasts." Xerlock's blood ran cold. Oh no. This wasn't just a test anymore. This was war. The air in the arena grew thick with tension as a heavy metal door rumbled open. The warlords sat rigid in their chamber, watching in silence. They had made their decision. Ryan tilted his head, his expression amused. Another challenge. Good. he was getting bored. From the shadows of the massive entrance, deep, guttural growls echoed through the arena. Then came the sound of claws scraping against the ground. Heavy, powerful, hungry, the apex beasts had arrived. These creatures were the galaxy's most feared predators, bioengineered killing machines, faster than any warrior, stronger than any war machine, and bred for only one purpose: combat. The crowd, once roaring with excitement, had gone completely still. Even the warlords hesitated, because no one had ever survived against an apex beast. Ryan cracked his knuckles. Finally, something fun. The first beast emerged, a towering mass of muscle and armored scales. Its 4 crimson eyes locked onto Ryan, its mouth opening to reveal rows of serrated fangs dripping with venom. Then came the second. Lean, fast, covered in razor-sharp spines. It moved like a shadow, its body shifting with unnatural agility. And the third, a monstrous, 8-legged horror, its chitinous shell gleaming under the arena lights. 3 beasts, 3 perfect killing machines. The warlords watched closely. This was it, the test that no one could pass. They wanted to see fear in Ryan's eyes. They found none. Instead, he grinned. The first beast lunged, its claws striking the air where Ryan had just stood. But he was already gone, moving faster than its own attack. With a twist of his body, he dodged again, slipping past razor-sharp teeth with effortless precision. Then he struck. One hit, a precise blow to the creature's exposed throat, a weak point. Crack. The apex beast staggered back, choking. Ryan didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion, he leaped forward, grabbing the beast's head, and snapped its neck. The warlords froze. The audience gasped. One of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy, killed in seconds. But there was no time to react. The second beast struck. It was fast, unbelievably fast. But Ryan was faster. It lunged, claws aimed at his throat. He ducked. The wind of its attack brushed past his hair. It spun, launching another strike. He sidestepped. The beast barely registered what was happening before. Ryan grabbed its spine and twisted. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the arena. The second apex beast collapsed, dead. The third and final creature hesitated. A killing machine. And yet, it hesitated. Because now, it was afraid. Ryan smiled. Smart one. But it didn't matter. It was already over. The beast tried to escape, but Ryan closed the distance instantly. He grabbed its thick, armored neck, ignoring the razor-sharp spines digging into his skin. And with one brutal motion, he crushed its throat. The monstrous creature collapsed in a heap, twitching once before going completely still. Silence. No one spoke. No one moved. The warlords, the audience, the entire galactic elite, they had just witnessed the impossible. 3 apex beasts, creatures engineered to be unkillable. Ryan had killed them all in under a minute, and he wasn't even breathing hard. He looked up at the warlords, his grin widening. So, what's next? And in that moment, the warlords realized the truth. They hadn't been testing Ryan. He had been testing them. The warlords sat in stunned silence, their reptilian eyes wide with something they had never felt before: fear. For centuries, they had ruled the galaxy through strength. Their warriors were unmatched, their elite soldiers considered the deadliest beings alive. No species had ever dared to challenge them. Until now. Until this human. Ryan stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by the bodies of 3 apex beasts. His hands were bloody, his uniform torn, but his breathing was steady, calm, controlled, effortless. The audience remained frozen, their cheers of bloodlust replaced with a silence thick with realization. Humanity was different. Humanity was something else entirely. The warlord leader, Vakor, slowly rose from his throne, his clawed hands gripping the armrests as he tried to process what had just happened. This was not how it was supposed to go. Ryan should have been dead. The beasts should have torn him apart. Instead, he had annihilated them. And worst of all, he had enjoyed it. Vakor had seen warriors kill before. He had witnessed thousands of battles, watched countless soldiers rise and fall. But never like this. There was no fear in Ryan's eyes. No hesitation. Only hunger. Not for survival. For the fight itself. That was what terrified Vakor the most. He stepped forward, his voice shaking. "What are you?" Ryan tilted his head, wiping a streak of blood from his face. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Not a victorious one. It was the smile of a predator. The one thing you should never have underestimated. His voice was casual, but it carried through the arena like a death sentence. A human. The warlords exchanged uneasy glances. This had been a test. A challenge designed to measure Ryan's abilities. But now, they realized the truth. The test had been on them. And they had failed. Because the moment they saw what Ryan could do, the moment they realized that humans were far more dangerous than they had ever imagined, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted. For centuries, warlords had ruled through strength. But now, a new force had emerged. A force they had mocked. A force they had dismissed as weak. But after today, no one would ever doubt humanity again. Ryan stretched his shoulders, glancing up at the warlords. "So," he raised an eyebrow, "are we done here, or do you have something else to throw at me?" Vakor hesitated. There was nothing left. No more tests. No more tricks. Just a choice. To challenge humanity, or to surrender to it. He turned to his fellow warlords. None of them spoke, because they all knew the war was already over. And humanity had won, without ever firing a single shot.